Hi, everybody. Welcome to Two OGs Hooking and Stitching Island Style. I'm Antoinette, your hostess, coming to you from the Bay of Fundy, New Brunswick in Canada. And today we have a very, very special guest that I've been looking forward to doing this interview with. And this is Samuel or Sam, whichever you prefer to be called, from the Irish Knitting Podcast.
Hello, everybody.
Samuel's going to introduce himself a little bit, and then we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. And I've got some questions to ask him. And as you know, this will premiere as a live, and coordinating Samuel's schedule with my schedule. So when we do the premiere, Samuel can be in the chat, and you can ask him questions. So Samuel, will you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me in your lovely channel, and a big hi to the entire community here. I'm really delighted, and I'm not used to interviews, so I'm very sorry if I stumble with my words, and it's quite early in the morning, so my English may not come up very well. But as you can tell from my accent, I am originally Italian. I'm from the very, very north of Italy by the Dolomites Alp. I grew up there. My family is from there. I always lived there in the past, I don't know, 500 years or something. And I am based in Ireland, in Dublin. I moved here right after my graduation for the love of the country. I came visiting Ireland many, many times when I was younger, and then I just fell in love. So I decided to move here, hence my podcast being an Irish knitting podcast. And what else? From myself, I grew up in a farm, and I basically had a lot of animals all around myself since I was very, very young. They were my friends, sort of things. And living in a very rural village, you don't have many people going on, so you end up hanging around with your dogs and sheep and cows, horses, and stuff like that, which was a very nice way to grow up, I think. And what else? Since very young, I was convinced I would have become a musician. I started studying piano when I was about 5, and I graduated in piano and composition from the Conservatory of Venice. And but then life changed, and I went to university, studied law, became a lawyer, and that is my 9 to 5 job. And I keep knitting for I don't know, as a big hobby of mine, to keep up my mental health and do something with my hands. And last year I started this adventure on YouTube and Instagram to share a little bit my knitting and my crafty work. It's a way for myself to keep up my family traditions, my cultural Italian traditions, and as well to explore a little bit more the Irish tradition, and eventually be a little bit innovating with my crafty and yarny adventures.
Oh,
Hope this
awesome.
answer your question a little bit.
Yeah, it does. Awesome. Awesome. I think it's great. Like I said, that's what intrigued me so much about wanting to interview you. And I was so pleased when you emailed me back and said, absolutely. I'm like, yes, I'm excited. I try to concentrate on diversity, but different, I mean, you being a male knitter and, and then we'll get into your designing and stuff too, but I just try to, and so I thought it would be really great. So thank you again for consenting to do this interview with me. So, well, first question is, sides to go dark, does it all the time. First question I'm going to ask you, which is I ask pretty much everybody this: when did you start knitting, and how did you learn, and how long have you been knitting?
Well, so it's a very interesting question because I can't pinpoint a time in my life when I started knitting. Since I was extremely young, 3 or 4 years of age, since I can't remember anything, actually, I always seen balls of yarn hanging around the house. My granny, my great grandmother, my mom, my aunts all knitted, and they are all crafty people. So I always seen this craft going on in my life. And as it happens in Italian schools, in secondary schools, so from the age of 10 to 14, you have the subject which is applied technical skills or something like that, and they teach people to knit. So boys and girls do take a class of knitting and do learn how to knit. So I basically kept up with this kind of a tradition all the way through. So I can't pinpoint a time in my life. Probably it became something a little bit more than just a hobby when I moved to Ireland. As I mentioned just earlier, I used to play the piano. It was a big part of my life. I moved to Ireland. I didn't own a piano. You know, it's a big thing. And when you are basically looking for your first job, you move to a new country, you don't have hundreds of euros to spend on a piano. So I didn't have this outlet. And the cheapest, easier way to make something and to keep busy was actually getting myself a pair of stray needles and some ball of acrylic yarn and knitting. And so since I moved here, I actually made of knitting something of my everyday, if it does make any sense.
No, it does. No, it does. It makes absolute sense. It does. I'll tell you, I've heard so many people from outside the US and Canada talk that when they were in school, that is when they learned to knit. And I think that is something that, you know, knit, crochet. I mean, back when I went back in the dark ages, pre-internet, pre all of this, you had home economics for the girls and the boys had wood shop. And then the big revolution came in the 70s. So the girls got a little bit of wood shop and the boys got a little bit of home ec, but there was nothing. I mean, we sewed, but we didn't do knitting or crocheting. And I'm so glad to see that over in Europe and that they still keep that tradition up, that they teach kids, male and female, the fiber arts, knitting, crocheting, tatting, all the different fiber arts. I think it's awesome. Because
well, I don't know.
No,
sorry, I don't know in Europe how it works. I know that the Nordic countries tend to be knitting heavy, but especially in Italy, as you know, you're Italian yourself. Italy is a very young country. It was divided since like what 100 years ago in 20 different little countries. So we do have this strong feeling of keeping up our own tradition. So I'm from Venice, from the Venetian region, and like there are subjects in school that teaches you to speak Venetian, for example, to do Venetian crafts or arts that are related to your country. And so on is true for all the other regions. So I think this beautiful cultural diversity keeps us, you know, driving our culture. So that's probably why we have this little thing.
It is. And you know, so you've been knitting a good part of your life, pretty much.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
I mean, you know, you're a lot younger than I am. I probably have shoes older than you, but I think that's absolutely wonderful. You like to keep traditions up. That's becoming less and less now. I'm proud of my culture, my heritage, where I came from. You know, I want my grandchildren to know about it, because you know, no matter where you live, you went from Italy to Ireland. I went from the States to Canada, you know, but I always in my heart will remain my Italian heritage, always. And I want to pass that on to my grandchildren so they know where they came from, because it was a gift from my grandparents to me that I was born free in a free country. So anyways, okay, here's a big question. Being a male knitter in a predominantly female craft has been for, you know, they say granny's knit. I'd like to get your point of view on the misconceptions of a male knitter or crocheter, you know, just in the fiber arts, the advantages and disadvantages to being a male in this craft.
Well, so first of all, I think the how I approach the stigma of being a male knitter. Well, as I said, growing up in Italy, we really don't have this type of stigma, because never mind boys or girls, everybody learn to knit. So if you knit as an adult, as a male adult, you're kind of keeping up with something you learned in school, like, I don't know, translating from Latin rather than doing paint works or something like that. So I found a little bit of stigma when growing up. I moved country, and then especially I started sharing on the internet. I feel like getting in touch with different cultures is probably stopping a little bit the male knitting community to grow, just because of the stigma. You know, crafty yarn art, yarn craft is a predominantly women dominated world, which is great. But I feel like boys knitting and guys that want to get their hands dirty into spinning or crocheting or knitting, they probably should have a little bit of more freedom to do so, and to share. And I'm so glad to see so many new men starting knitting, crocheting everywhere now. Is exploding since the British Olympian swimmer Guy Daly started actually
Yeah.
going on television and doing the Olympics, knitting. And like, everybody is crazy for knitting, and I see in Ireland here now is getting so much easier. Advantages and disadvantages. Well, the bigger negative point is that being as male knitters such a very small, tiny group, it's difficult to find patterns that applies to us. You can find that odd jumper that was created for a male body, but generally you end up knitting up or creating women's clothing and kind of tailoring them a little bit into your shape. And
Yeah.
this is what I do, for example. The advantage, though, this can be an advantage as well, is that you learn so many more skills so much quicker, because you have to modify patterns, you have to be creative to make the stuff fit you, basically. So you end up working so much more to get the result that you want. I think
Awesome.
these are the main thing. And you know, the next thing that I kind of want to mention is the little bit of awkwardness when you approach a yarn store, a physical yarn store. I remember the first time I got into a yarn store looking for this or that yarn or suggestion, and the poor old lady at the counter was kind of shocked. And the first thing she asked me is, "What is your wife knitting?" And I was like, "Oh wow." And okay, fair enough. I mean, it's odd to see a young male walking into a yarn shop, but you know, it's getting more and more common.
Well, and again, too, she was an older lady, so she's coming from a generation, or even coming from a cultural standpoint, like you said, because there are some cultures that men do knit and do fiber arts out of necessity. Here on the island, 100 years ago, a lot of the fishermen would knit because they do their nets, right? And then they would their socks and jumpers, they learned to knit. And here it was Briggs and Little Wool. That's 150 years. It's been owned by the same family, and it's the oldest woolen mill still going here in
Right.
Canada, but I think North America. So, and it's rustic wool, but they do have some softer wool now. But I think that's awesome though. That, can you imagine that little old lady now? She watches your podcast thinking, I knew him when. So that would be pretty cute. Okay, now you were talking about how you having to modify patterns, which brings me into, you're a knitwear designer, or as you say, an aspiring knitwear designer. I've seen some of your designs. When did you decide to become a knitwear designer, and what is your design process?
So I decided pretty early to become a knitwear designer, just because I always been making my own stuff and I couldn't stick to a pattern. Apart from like a very specific patterns that I really love the design from a designer that I like or whatever, but I have this urge to create stuff, and made me actually start writing down what I created, and I discovered Ravelry, for example, and I started putting a couple of patterns there. I got a little bit of positive feedback, which is great, and that grew from being just a pastime, a hobby, to something a little bit more. And yeah, that's basically the way I started my designing process. I am at heart still an artist. I like to paint and to draw a lot, to sketch. I keep a sketchbook literally everywhere I go, and then I probably start from there, an idea, something that I see around, and then that will be translated into color work, which is the technique that I like the most. I love stranded color work, and I find that is a way to paint with yarn. And yeah, probably everything starts from an idea, from a sketch, and then gets translated into an accessory, a garment, or something with color work generally. I think, yeah, I think that is the way that I rock.
Okay. I'm just gonna I'm just pausing this for a second. No, it's not cooperating. This will all be edited. It's recording still. I was gonna go let Gracie in, but we'll do. Okay. As your journey as a knitwear designer, bumps along the way, your learning curve. I mean, have you discovered anything, new, inspired by another designer, another knitter, a podcast? So, I mean, it's just your knitting journey.
Yeah, so bumps in the road as a designer is definitely the first of all the costs that you have to bear. You know, it's you have to, of course, buy the yarn, and if you are knitting for a pattern that you eventually are aspiring to sell, you need to knit with an appropriate yarn. You can't really get the first acrylic yarn that you find in the local Euro shop or whatever. But looking for kind of more particular yarn or something that is more mainstream, that was the first thing, monetary wise, and then location wise. I live in Ireland. Apparently in Ireland there's a sheep every two people or something like that, but it's a sheep heavy country, but we don't have wool, or we don't have much wool, and wool is not imported a lot in the country, and it's very expensive to get wool in. So I find myself hitting the wall every time I try to find one of the beautiful yarns that all the podcasters talk about on the internet, and it's very difficult. I really hope that Ireland will grow a little bit in this point. That is the first point, the cost and availability of yarn. And then, of course, another bump, but which is a plus as well, is learning techniques. So I started with color work, and I think I'm decent at color work, but I don't know anything about lace work or cables or brioche or whatever other technique. So learning these new techniques and this new construction is actually something that is enriching me very much, and makes me actually want to start coming up with new designs and new stuff and learn new techniques. So, there are pros and cons. And then the last big thing, in my opinion, is actually the internet. The internet helps us a lot to share our project, but I finding myself constantly battling the necessity of sharing more and more, and the algorithm to feed this algorithm that wants more and more and more. And I have a full-time job, and I have friends and family to spend time with, and I can't constantly produce stuff. It's not enjoyable as well. So you end up seeing all these amazing designers and knitters on the internet that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers and followers, and your teeny tiny channel is a little bit neglected by the grand scheme of situations. So that is something that makes me really sad. But at the same time, as you mentioned before, and many times in your channel, I want to build a community around myself, not just to have followers.
Yep.
You know,
Exactly. Fiber family. It's very, very, very
exactly.
important. You were talking about the which really surprised me when I found this out. I had another friend in Ireland. Really surprised me was the fact that the availability in wool in Ireland, and if you ship somebody wool in Ireland, they got to pay duty on it. On Instagram, I have seen it's just an FYI for you, anybody else out there, called Wild Atlantic Yarns out of Donegal. Maybe they got beautiful indie dyed yarns. So I'm wondering.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
that would
yeah,
be a
there are
possibility for you.
like a lot of nice indie dyeing yarns. I work a lot with Fine Leaves yarns as well, which is another yarn crafter down in Cork, if I'm right, and she's amazing. And we have a couple of mills as well. The Studio Donegal, which does like ship everywhere, and the Woolendale or something like that. But you know, they are very, very small productions, and
Yeah.
and if you want all the beautiful Norwegian yarns, or rather than Canadian or American, it's impossible to have it over here.
Well, I have found, I mean, this is in line with what we were talking about, the bumps in the road and stuff. Living here in Canada, I can't get the good deals that they get down in the States, right? On not just big box yarn. I deal with there's a couple of Canadian, they're on the scale of yarn stores, they're small, okay, but they've got beautiful yarn, and I show yarn on my channel. I've shown that to you, and just like when I did the pickle jar from Aberdeen's wool, I love the merino. It's really nice, but it's expensive. Like you said, it's the cost. We've got one LIS here, one, and most of my yarn I have to, and I'm not ashamed to say it, is I refuse to pay full price. Because I work hard, like you. I work hard for my money, and I want to get the best value I can. I do have acrylic that I like. I like a lot of acrylic blends. They've come a long way since grandma with acrylic. Some of the acrylic, you can't tell it's acrylic anymore.
Right.
But I just wish, and I understand because of the cost and stuff, because I've talked to some indie dyers, the affordability and the availability of yarn in different parts of the world. Like you said, in Ireland, I mean, the Scandinavian, Norwegian, and up that way, they've got beautiful yarn, and they can buy it cheaper there because they're right there.
Yeah.
We're here. We got to pay a lot for it.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, you got to treat yourself.
That's so true. But it's quite a sad though. I was talking to an alpaca farmer down here in the Wicklow Mountains, and he was mentioning that they basically shear their alpacas and they send the fleece down to Spain to get spun. I mean, with such a big tradition of sheep farming and alpaca farming now over here in the island, would be nice to create the possibility for these farmers to actually spawn the yarns here and create this sort of Irish business that is kind of missing right now. So yeah,
that would be awesome. I love alpaca. I love alpaca.
Oh yeah, me too. I love alpaca. It's my most favorite fiber ever.
I love Surrey alpaca. The Surrey. Oh my God.
It's so soft. It's like a cloud.
Yes, it is. Now it's not that kind of channel, but I would just love to lay and just kind of squish and So my fiber family knows I'm not quite all there. But going into knit, we're segueing. I mean, we're flowing here. It's segueing. As far as the knitting, I was going to ask your favorite brand or manufacturer or dyer of yarn, your favorite, to work with, the fiber content, and your favorite weight to work with.
Right.
That's
so
a lot of questions there.
So my favorite manufacturer, I have a couple. So I do love very, very much the super soft wool from Holst Garn. Holst is a Danish brand that does this magic wool, in my opinion. They come in big cones. They're very well priced. And yeah, when the cones are drenched in, oh, here you are. Yeah.
That's Holscarn.
Perfect. Yeah, it's so beautiful. They are drenched in this spinning oil, and when you wash them, the wool blooms and become the most lofty and beautiful
Yeah.
wool ever. And the fact that they are kind of well priced as well means that out of a 500 grams cone, you can have a couple of jumpers, and they don't cost you anything basically. I used to be very fond of similar yarns coming from the UK. JC Rennie is a brand that I really, really loved for their colorways and diversity of yarns, and Woolly Knits as well, which is another brand that is becoming more and more popular. But after the situation that we all love of Brexit, it's becoming impossible to buy yarn from there. They hit you with import taxes like crazy. So
Oh,
we are
wow.
left with the Holst Garn, which I don't complain about. So I think they are my favorite brand. I do like other brands like the Italian Adriafiel and Sandnes from Norway, Rauma from Sweden. I think they are all nice brands, quite difficult to get over here, but so far Holst is being the core part of my brand. My favorite. What was the question? My favorite yarn weight.
Your favorite, of course, as your, so I'm assuming that your favorite is to work with is wool or like a wool blend.
Yeah, I prefer working with rustic yarns, wools, 100% wools. But you made me just think about alpaca, and I had a chance to make a few jumpers with drops alpaca, which is 100% alpaca. I know the drop situation is getting a little bit political over the internet, so I want to touch that. Drops is very affordable over here,
Yep.
and having a ball of alpaca yarn for just a couple of euros is magic for me. So I will probably keep looking for this type of yarns, and alpaca is one of my favorite fibers because it's so soft and warm, but at the same time really sheer and light. So yeah, but definitely the raw sticker, if it's even a word in English, the better.
Okay, I'm just going to pause you here for 1 second.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay,
Right.
so you like alpaca. Have you tried Holscarn's Titicaca?
No, but I have a couple of balls coming into the post, so I will for sure try it very soon.
You're going to fall in love. You're going to fall. I mean, the name makes you giggle, but the mine's up in there. I love Titicaca. Oh, it is so soft. It is so nice.
Well, I can't wait to try it.
You're gonna fall in love, and it's affordable, like you said.
Definitely, yeah.
Holscarn's probably one of the most affordable quality yarns that I get. I do. I actually bought their color card so I can mix and match my colors. You know,
Yeah, that's
yes.
very clever because sometimes you can't tell from the website what color is what, and you end up with a magic combination of colors.
They're not that expensive, and if you get a chance, order them. A lot of times they'll put them on sale. Just so you know, this is everybody's PSA, public service announcement. I got the whole color cards. I have for Coast. Now, Coast is my favorite one. I've tried the super soft, but Coast is my favorite. It is a wool cotton blend, and I love Coast.
Right.
We have a. No, I'm not going to play.
We have an adorable guest.
Yes, I'm going. Yeah, we're gonna shut her up. No, you're gonna make me have to edit. Okay.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, sorry about that interruption, but Gracie, as you guys all know, is a puppy and she is a pain, but I love her. Okay, we got your favorite fiber and brand, but what about needles? You talked about straight needles, but that's kind of gone by the wayside, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, that evolved from stray needle, which was what I saw my grandparents working with, to circular needles. And I think, well, my favorite brand and everybody else's favorite brand probably is Gu. I really love their red lace. They are an investment though, but I think if you are like getting into a little bit of more knitting than usual, you probably uh, could actually make a justification for those. But I have sets out of Knit Pro, which probably is Knitter's Pride over there, and Haya. I really love them all. I can't fold them. Just a recommendation though, because I tried to make my mom knit with circular needles, but she wouldn't be bothered. She got those needles out of Amazon, the gray cable ones that you can buy
Yeah.
very cheaply everywhere. And I found that the wire, the cable gets in your hand so much that if you're starting with those, you're never going to make it. So I'm probably spending a little bit more on needles makes a lot of sense for you to get much easier work.
It
So
does.
those are my kind of favorite needles. And I tend to stick to the sizes from 2 millimeters to 3.5 millimeters. No idea what's in US sizes. I
Um,
tend to work with very thin yarn generally. So
okay, well, yeah, you like thin yarns. I have my Chalgoos, the full 4-inch set plus the shorties. And actually my husband went into a yarn shop and bought those for me. He paid too much because I told him you could have got a better deal. But like you, excuse me, plus my very first set I ever bought was a set of Clover Takumi bamboo needles. And I still use them. I love them because there's certain yarns that I use with the Takumis because there's a little bit more of a grip. If you're using my Chalgoos, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're my favorite cable. The cable's awesome.
yeah.
But I'm knitting along and slip off the needles they go because the yarn's just too slick. You know, again, I'm into the technical side with fibers and needles and stuff. But I do love my needles. And you said it is an investment. And I did not buy my Chalgoos in the beginning of my journey. I started with a set of Knit Picks options or Knit Pro option. No, Knit Picks options, nickel plated. And they were fairly okay. Knitter's Pride also, some of theirs. And I had the long, the short. I still have the Majestic Square. But then as I became more heavily into my knitting, I sold those sets, took that money and put it towards my Chalgoos. I waited till they went on sale and I got a really good deal on my 4-inch. I didn't like the 5-inch. I wanted 4-inch. But like you said, it's been an investment and it makes my knitting. Oh my gosh, it makes well, not only faster, but it makes it more enjoyable because I don't have this cord in my way all the time, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely understand. And in my case, I do prefer metal needles though, because working with a lot of rustic yarns,
You need
wooden
the
needles
slide.
get on your way. And
Yeah.
although they are great for flying, for example, because you can't carry those metal tips. And I do prefer the longer 5 inches.
Oh, you like the
thing.
5? Okay.
Yeah, because I have big hands.
Well,
It gets
guys, it's a different thing.
yeah.
I use, and my first sock needles, because I was so afraid of DPNs to knit socks. Was terrified of DPNs. I kept trying and I couldn't do it. Then I saw this video on 9-inch circulars, Chalgo, and I got them. Oh my heavens, for small circumference knitting, they're great. But now I like my DPNs. I do use my DPNs, and I've got Zings and I've got Knit Picks, the 4-inch ones, the short ones. Yeah. And I love it. I love sock knitting. Do you sock knit?
I do very much knit socks. I knitted and designed a lot of socks in my time. I created last year a collection of socks dedicated to the buildings of Venice. If you are familiar with the city, we have this big canal going through Venice, the Canal Grande, Grand Canal. And all the noble families in the past used to build these massive buildings. And now we have this huge collection of artworks that are facing the canal. So weird enough, I connected that to sock knitting, and I knitted a pair of socks for each of the buildings. Coming through, I don't know, the design on the facade, the stoneworks, or colors of the facades of these buildings, introducing them into the color work of the socks. So I do knit very much socks. For knitting socks, though, I do prefer DPNs all the way through. I don't know. I haven't cranked the magic of the 9-inch circulars. I haven't cranked the magic of working in the magic loop technique for socks. It's DPNs for me.
I do DPNs or 9-inch. 9-inch, it takes some getting used to, and it takes some practice, because if you have big hands, it might be hard to work, because I go down to size 0 on the 9-inch, but I always do my heels and gusset on DPNs. I have seen his some of his socks, because that's actually how I got the idea in my head to get him to come on the channel. And towards the end of the interview here, we're going to get all where you can find him at. And I have got to go check out that sock collection. If it's the Buildings of Venice, I got to check that whole collection out.
Yeah. And the particularity of the collection is that the heel, if you are interested, it comes from a heel construction that my great grandmother made. So I basically got a few pair of these old socks. She passed away, and she knitted for me when I was younger. And I was looking at the heel. I was like, this is not a heel flap and gusset as I knit. So I basically reconstructed back from the actual socks what she has done. And it's something that I haven't seen anywhere before. You need basically a heel flap and gusset, but keeping the work in the round. It's very interesting. And you keep, if you are fond of stranded color work or intarsia or whatever, you can keep working the color work in the round and having heel flap and gusset, rather than substituting for a kiss heel or a short row heel, which is quite interesting.
You should do, and okay, everybody in the comments here, you should do a tutorial on this, and you can call it, my granny's heel.
Well, I called it the Venetian heel because I found that if you go into one of the museums, I can't recall the name now, in Venice, there are hand-knitted garments back when Venice was a republic, and they all have that type of thing. So I suppose, I haven't done much research on this, but that is the way locally they used to knit their socks.
Make a pattern, write a pattern.
Well, it's all in my pattern, so if you check out one of them, I'll send you one to you and for your viewers later on. So you can.
Well, I'm going to be telling about where they can go and check you out. But that is awesome. I think that is just absolutely brilliant.
No, thanks.
A little bit of your history and culture, and your grandma, and the way you did it, working backwards. I think that's brilliant. Okay. Do you knit other designers' patterns, or do you only knit your own?
All the time I knit other designers' patterns, especially for garments. I find a little bit intimidating to start a pattern for myself. This because, I'm still trying to figure out my way into designing, and I came up with a few jumpers engineered for my own body, and I wrote down the pattern. They are now in the final stage of being knitted, so they will come up soon. But generally, I have a few designers that I really love, and I really love their style, and I find myself making their patterns all the time.
Right. Who are some of your favorite designers?
Well, there's the entire collection of Sadness is absolutely stunning. And if you watch my videos, I always ask people if they know how to find the booklets of the patterns, because they are apparently impossible to find, especially translated in English. I think those people out of Sadness have some very clever designer for men garments. which is something you can't really find much. And then, of course, I really love Arne and Carlos out of Norway. They design for Rowan, and their patterns are very clever as well and very beautiful. So I think these two are my main. I'm currently knitting one of those big round colorwork yokes, and the pattern is a Ridari from Istex, which is the yarn company that makes Let Lopi and all of that yarn.
Okay.
out of
Yep.
Brooklyn. And apparently that is coming up very nicely. So that may be another.
Look forward to
of the
seeing that. Look forward to
designs.
seeing. I look forward to seeing that. Have you ever? I think there's like Max the Knitter. He's out of Canada here.
Yep.
Yep, he's out of Canada. There's quite a few male knitters out there, and like I said, there's quite a few male. If you check through YouTube, there's quite a bunch of male knitters that some have designed.
Right.
I have done in the past, way back. I had done, the men of YouTube, and I had recommended these channels because any channel I recommend, I watch, and I like it. But no, I can see in your future in your channel doing some tutorials.
I am, yeah, there may be something that can come up. I need to figure out a way to film a tutorial. I've tried a couple of times hanging my phone in some contraption, but yeah, that will take some technical skills that I still need to grow to.
You need one of these.
Yeah.
It's an arm. This is for my mic. My new, I've been messing with things, Mike, but yeah, I would, because I love seeing other people's methods and techniques, because you might do something that I'm struggling with and think light bulb comes on and says, yeah, that's how I can do it. I'm looking forward to that Venetian heel too, because like I said, I want to get more into my socks, and I really want to try color work. It's on my bucket list to do color work. I actually have a friend that wants me to do this sweater. It's by it's Norwegian, and it's a traditional Norwegian yoke and like 4 colors, but he wants me to make this sweater. I'm like, you have no idea what color work I have done is really, really sad. The little bit of color work I've done is very sad. It's very sad. Well, then we're going to flip into this here, because we're getting where do you see your channel going to in the future? I mean, I know you have a full-time job in that, but where would you like to be, a year from now, 5 years from now? Do you see yourself continuing on as long as you're enjoying what you're doing?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't know. It's been a year exactly since I started filming my podcast, and mind-blowing situation. We had a community of about 2,600 people, and it's astonishing. I know that like a lot of channels have thousands more than me and much younger, but for me, like sitting in my living room and talking for half an hour every couple of weeks, it's boom, mind-boggling. And also, I don't really have a physical knitting community around me. So this is my way to talk to people, to talk to you, and share, learn. It's probably small, but in a year time, I don't know. My dream, if you wish, will be to be able to partner with a yarn company rather than a publisher, and collect a few of my designs, my ideas, and perhaps come up with a book that would be not just a technical knitting book, but as well give some of the behind the scenes, meaning like the tradition that I want to bring up, my family history, rather than the techniques that I kind of scavenge around Ireland and Venice. And lot of my knitting books are on my coffee table. They are beautiful to look at. They have beautiful pictures and beautiful to read. So that would be like the absolute dream, but I know that it's very difficult. And
Don't never say never. Never say never. And I'll tell you off when we finish the interview, I'm going to give you a few little things I found out about something in that, because I do talk with some knitters that have published books. You said about having a physical community around you. I know a lot because of our world now. The internet has been very, very helpful in bringing the world together. But have you ever thought of getting in with a bunch of guys? Kevin and Ray from Needles at the Ready have a knit group they do every Thursday night. The Soccermatician has a Zoom that he does that people from all over the world come to. There's so many different where you can Zoom and knit, and it's actually like you and I just, sitting here. I do a Zoom once a month. I'm trying to do it once a month with some of the girls because it is so hard with work and life and everything and location. Logistics is a big thing. You should try that, check that out, because seriously, it's an awesome community that we have. And if you can connect, it's even better. So I know you're pressed for time.
Definitely on the internet. It's just like a physical community is more difficult to come up, especially here in Dublin,
Yeah. Well, we're getting close because I know you have to work. Now we're gonna get into the admin stuff for you. Where can we find you on the internet? Your patterns, all of your social media. Let her rip.
Yeah. So my podcast on here, it's an Irish knitting podcast, and but you can find me around the internet looking for Irish Farm Art, and I have a website, irishfarmart.com, and or Ravelry as well, Irish Farm Art, which is basically was born as my art channel and then turned a little bit into my knitting channel and knitting social media. So you can find a mix of my paintings and my knitting and everything about me.
Awesome. And this is all going to be in the description box below, and where you can find his patterns on Ravelry. And if you're not and haven't checked Samuel out, please go and check his channel out. Hit the little button, hit the bell, because I really think you will, even if you don't knit, you're just a crocheter. Because I know some of my crocheters are knitters now. They're knitters. I had a challenge out a couple of years ago, and they love knitting now more than crocheting. I love all my fiber arts. I love them all because they all use different muscles. And as you get old, bones and joints like to ache. So I take a break and I'll go from knitting to crocheting to Tunisian. And I'm doing mosaic now. I love mosaic crochet. Oh, I got to learn mosaic knitting, but mosaic crochet, oh, I love it. So I'm going to put all of this, Samuel, into the description box so people can know where to find you. And as I've told you, Samuel's is our December interview, and I'll send you all the information on that about the premiere and stuff. But as we're coming to an end here, is there anything else that you would like to talk about or you'd like to add before we let you take your leave? Because this is a busy man. He's a very busy man, a very important man.
Well, I'm not important at all.
Sure you are.
Something that I would like to add. If you are a guy that wants to start knitting, don't be afraid, and there is support out there. You just mentioned earlier the Needles at the Ready podcast. They are two brilliant guys. There's Max the Knitter, there's Stephen West even, and all of that. So we are a small but mighty community. And I find that this is a way as well to integrate in the wider community. So no matter what your gender, identity, it's just a great art and craft to start. And we spoke a lot about traditions here today and family and roots. And I feel like knitting probably will help as well bring back this type of thing that is getting lost a little bit nowadays. So it's quite important as a human mission not to get lost, and we all should knit a little bit more because it's good for ourselves and our mental health, and just a very nice thing to do.
And it's so nice to see somebody else that loves the traditions. And you're so right, Samuel. There's a lot of these arts, whether it's cooking, knitting, crochet. There are so many things today that are getting lost in technology. My generation isn't from the technology generation. I grew up without any of this. I was later in life, I found this. I love the fact that it brings, I can talk with you and people from all over the world, and we can share our love of knitting and crocheting and tradition. That is so important. And like he said, try to encourage, take your kid, take that phone, tablet, computer, put it aside, make it be shut off for 2 hours a day, and take that 2 hours a day and knit, crochet, paint, something that it's going to be creative, because we're losing our innovators. There's hasn't been a great invention in a really long time because people aren't, there's imaginations aren't being stimulated. The innovations are going by the wayside. Everything's instant gratification.
But you know what? Everybody wants to be so unique nowadays, especially on the internet world. And I find at the same time, everybody's looking like everybody else's. So what's better than having your own made jumper or hat, and you can modify it as you want, and as you grow in the craft you can make actually your own thing. So that's the way to go, and it's more ecological as well, so waste lesser resources, and you cherish your jumper forever, and then you can pass it over to further generations. So
exactly,
we have a lot to
we do
learn.
And by the way, on a side note, you'll love doing cables once you start doing them. You'll love cables. I love cables. Frustrate some. You working on one?
I started on jumper right like yesterday evening. So I'm just trying to figure out, because everybody and their dogs are wearing iron jumpers in this country now, and is getting, here you go. It's getting so popular, and I really want one. So
okay, well,
I'll let you know.
I can't wait to see these. His whips he's working on right now, his projects, his next designs. So Samuel, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and doing this. It has been an absolute pleasure. I mean, this is an upcoming brilliant designer. I'm going to give you all his information. Go check his podcast out. What are you waiting for? Subscribe, like, click that bell notification. Like he said, every couple of weeks he puts a podcast out. And let's give our male knitters and crocheters, a boost up there, and let's get their community built up a little bit better. So Samuel, as they say from my and your home country, ciao bella. You have a beautiful day, and next year we'll have to bring him back on and see where, 6 months from now, where he's at.
Thank you so much, and grazie mille.
Oh, Mimic, like I said, Mimic, I need to go to my home country, my homeland. All right, everybody. Here's bye for now.
Bye-bye.
From the Bay of Fundy on Deer Island. See you in the next video. And remember, hug, smiles, and happiness. Pass it on. Make the world a better place.